The night Rowan Halstead stormed into Lillian Voss's pre-wedding dinner and shattered her engagement in front of Ellingridge County's entire elite wasn't just scandal, it was revenge dressed as rescue. For years, the Duke had ruled with ice in his veins and silence on his tongue. He'd raised her, protected her, then destroyed her the day she turned 18 with words so cold they left scars. Now, watching another man claim what he'd thrown away, Rowan finally cracked. But exposing Adrian Crowell's lies meant confessing his own, and some truths cut deeper than any betrayal. If you want to see how a man who chose pride over love fights to win back the woman he broke, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city and hit that like button. You won't believe how this ends. The first time Rowan Halstead realized he was in love with Lillian Voss, she was 16 and laughing at something idiotic he'd said about crop rotation. He was 28, a duke, a man who'd inherited a crumbling estate and a reputation sharper than broken glass. And she was a child, an orphaned heiress he'd taken in 7 years prior when her parents died in a carriage accident that half the county whispered wasn't an accident at all. He'd promised her dying mother he'd keep her safe. He never promised he wouldn't fall in love with her. That realization hit him like a fist to the gut while they stood in the south pasture, her hair catching the late afternoon light, her eyes bright with the kind of trust that made his chest hurt. She'd been talking about expanding the orchards, her hands moving in quick, confident gestures, and he'd made some dry comment about her turning into a farmer. She'd laughed, really laughed, and the sound broke something inside him. He left for London the next morning without saying goodbye. When he came back 3 weeks later, he made sure she understood exactly where she stood. "You're dismissed for the evening, Lillian." She froze in the doorway of his study, a ledger tucked under her arm. It was nearly midnight. They'd spent the last 4 hours going over estate finances like they always did, her suggesting solutions, him pretending he didn't need her insight, even though they both knew the truth. "Dismissed?" She turned, and the confusion on her face was so genuine it made him feel like a bastard. "Rowan, we haven't finished the—" "Miss Voss," he corrected, not looking up from the papers in front of him. "And yes, we're finished." The silence that followed was the kind that echoes. He heard her shift her weight, heard the small intake of breath that meant she was about to argue. He kept his eyes on the desk. "I don't understand," she said finally, and her voice was smaller than he'd ever heard it. "Did I do something wrong?" "Yes," he thought. "You grew up." "No," he said aloud. "But things are going to change around here. You're 18 now. It's time you started acting like it." "Acting like what?" "Like a ward. Not a partner." Another silence. This one felt like glass cracking. "A ward." She repeated the word slowly, like she was testing it. "That's what I am to you now?" He finally looked up, met her eyes. Forced himself to hold her gaze, even though what he saw there, hurt, confusion, the beginning of something that looked like betrayal, made him want to take it all back. "That's what you've always been?" he lied. Her jaw tightened. She set the ledger down on the chair by the door with a care that felt deliberate. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. "Then I'll remember that, Your Grace." The formal address was a knife between his ribs. She left without another word. That was 2 years ago. 2 years of Rowan keeping his distance. 2 years of treating her like a stranger in the home they'd built together. 2 years of watching her withdraw into herself, the light in her eyes dimming a little more each day until she looked at him the way everyone else in Ellingridge County did, with polite deference and absolutely no warmth. He told himself it was better this way. He told himself he was protecting her. He told himself a lot of things that sounded like excuses at 3 a.m, when he couldn't sleep because he knew she was just down the hall, and he'd put an ocean between them with his own damn hands. And then Adrian Crowell showed up. Rowan first heard about it from his steward, Marcus, who had the irritating habit of knowing everything that happened in the county before Rowan did. "Miss Voss received a caller this afternoon," Marcus said, setting down the afternoon correspondence. "Adrian Crowell stayed for nearly 2 hours. Rowan's pen didn't pause. "And?" "And nothing, Your Grace. Just thought you'd want to know." "Why would I want to know who calls on my ward?" Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he knew exactly how full of shit that statement was. "Of course, my mistake." But Rowan did want to know. hated that he wanted to know. Spent the rest of the afternoon pretending he wasn't listening for the sound of carriage wheels on gravel or Lillian's voice in the front hall. Adrian Crowley. The name tasted like ash. Rowan knew the family, minor nobility, decent lands in the western part of the county, a reputation for charm, and not much else. Adrian was the eldest son, handsome in that easy, uncomplicated way that probably made women feel safe. The kind of man who smiled too much and meant half of it. The kind of man Lillian deserved. The thought made Rowan's hands curl into fists. He saw them together 3 days later. It was late afternoon, and he'd been riding the northern boundary when he spotted them walking through the rose garden, the one Lillian's mother had planted before she died, the one Lillian still tended herself, even though they had gardeners who could do it for her. Adrian was talking, gesturing with his hands the way people do when they're trying to be entertaining. Lillian was listening, her head tilted slightly, a small smile on her face. It wasn't her real smile. Rowan knew her real smile, the one that started slow and then took over her whole face, the one that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. This was something else, something polite. But Adrian didn't know the difference. Rowan watched them from the tree line, hating himself for it, hating the way Adrian reached out to touch her elbow when he made her laugh, hating the way she didn't pull away, hating that he had no right to feel anything about it at all. You're courting him. It wasn't a question. Rowan stood in the doorway of the library where Lillian sat curled in the window seat, a book in her lap. She looked up, and for a second, just a second, something flickered across her face that might have been hope. It died the moment she saw his expression. Yes, she said simply. Why? Her eyebrows rose. Is that really a question you're entitled to ask? You're my responsibility. I'm 20 years old, Rowan. She closed the book with a snap. You stopped treating me like your responsibility the day I turned 18? Or have you forgotten? He hadn't forgotten, couldn't forget. But hearing her say it out loud felt like confirmation of every failure he'd been cataloging for 2 years. Adrian Crowley is kind, she cut in, respectful, interested in what I have to say. All things you used to be before you decided I wasn't worth your time anymore. That's not... He stopped, started again. I never said you weren't worth my time. You didn't have to say it. She stood, and there was something in the way she moved, a coiled tension, like she was holding herself together by force of will. You made it very clear with your actions, and now you want to waltz in here and question my choices? You lost that right when you stopped talking to me. I'm still your guardian. Then act like it. Her voice rose, and he realized with a jolt that she was angry, really angry. He'd seen Lillian frustrated, annoyed, stubborn, but never like this. You want to protect me? Fine. But don't pretend this is about my well-being when you can't even look me in the eye half the time. Don't stand there and judge my decisions when you won't tell me why you changed yours. Lillian, why did you push me away? The question came out raw, desperate. What did I do that was so wrong you couldn't even stand to be in the same room as me anymore? You didn't do anything, he wanted to say. I did. I wanted you in ways I had no right to want. I still do. And it's killing me. But the words stuck in his throat like they always did, and the silence stretched between them until it became its own answer. That's what I thought. Lillian's laugh was bitter. At least Adrian talks to me. At least he acts like I exist. She walked past him, close enough that he could smell the lavender soap she used, and he let her go. Always let her go. The courtship moved fast after that. Too fast, Rowan thought, watching from the margins as Adrian became a fixture at the estate. Dinners 3 times a week, afternoon walks, evenings in the parlor where Adrian would play piano badly and Lillian would pretend to be charmed. Rowan endured it the way he endured everything, with silence and the kind of control that made his jaw ache from clenching. But he watched, observed, noticed things. Like how Adrian's clothes were well-made but a season out of fashion. How his carriage, while polished, showed signs of disrepair around the wheel hubs. How he always arrived just before dinner and stayed just long enough to be invited to eat. Small things, maybe meaningless things. But Rowan had built an empire on noticing details others missed, and these details nagged at him like a splinter he couldn't dig out. So he started asking questions. I need information on Adrian Crowell. Marcus looked up from his desk, one eyebrow raised. Any particular kind of information? Financial, property holdings, debts, everything. May I ask why? No. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll have it by the end of the week. I need it in 3 days. Of course you do. But Marcus was already making notes, his expression carefully neutral. Anything else? Rowan hesitated. Then, be discreet. Always am, Your Grace. The report landed on Rowan's desk exactly 72 hours later, and what he read made his blood run cold. Adrian Crowley wasn't just in debt. He was drowning in it. The family estate was mortgaged to the hilt. 3 different creditors were circling. His father had died 6 months ago, leaving Adrian with bills that would take a generation to pay off, even if he lived like a monk. Which he didn't. There were gambling debts, unpaid tabs at half a dozen establishments in London, a pattern of extravagant spending followed by increasingly desperate borrowing. And then, buried in the last page of the report, the detail that made everything click into place. Lillian's inheritance, held in trust until she married, was worth approximately £60,000. Rowan set the papers down very carefully, picked them up again, read them twice more to be sure he hadn't misunderstood. Then he stood, walked to the sideboard, poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, and drained the glass in one swallow. You're going to tell her. Marcus stood in the doorway, arms crossed. It was past midnight, but he'd apparently decided Rowan needed supervision. Of course I'm going to tell her. When? Tomorrow. Tonight. I don't know. Rowan poured another drink, then thought better of it, and set the glass down. She deserves to know what he is. And what if she doesn't believe you? The question hit harder than it should have. Rowan turned, met Marcus's gaze. Why wouldn't she believe me? Because you've spent 2 years pushing her away, and now you're suddenly concerned about her welfare? Marcus's tone was gentle, but the words cut deep. She might think you're trying to sabotage her happiness out of spite. That's insane. Is it? Marcus moved into the room, picked up the report. From her perspective, you went from being her closest confidant to treating her like a stranger. No explanation, no apology, just silence. And now the moment she finds someone who makes her feel valued again, you show up with accusations about his character? They're not accusations, they're facts. Facts that conveniently align with you wanting to keep her away from him. Rowan's hands curled into fists. This isn't about jealousy, isn't it? He's using her, Marcus. For her money. That's all she is to him, a solution to his debts. I know. I read the report. Marcus set it down. But she doesn't know. And when you tell her, you need to be very careful about how you do it. Because right now, the person she trusts least in this world is you. The truth of that statement settled over Rowan like a shroud. I can't let her marry him, he said quietly. Then you're going to have to give her a reason to believe you. A reason that doesn't sound like a desperate man trying to keep her under his control. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. And you might want to ask yourself why it matters so much to you. Because I think we both know this isn't just about protecting your ward. The door closed behind him, and Rowan was alone with the report and the truth he'd been avoiding for 2 years. He was in love with Lillian Voss. Had been since that afternoon in the South Pasture when she'd laughed at his terrible joke. And he'd rather destroy himself than watch her marry a man who saw her as a transaction. He found her the next morning in the stables, brushing down her mare. She didn't look up when he entered, just kept working the curry comb through the horse's coat in long, steady strokes. We need to talk, Rowan said. No, we don't. Lillian, Miss Voss, she corrected, throwing his own words from 2 years ago back at him. If we're going to be formal, let's commit to it. He deserved that. Probably deserved worse. Fine, Miss Voss. I need to discuss something with you about Adrian Crowell. She paused, resumed brushing. What about him? I've had him investigated. Now she did stop. Turned to face him, the curry comb still in her hand. Her expression was unreadable. You had him investigated, she repeated. Yes. Why? Because something felt off. Something felt off, she echoed. So you took it upon yourself to pry into the private affairs of a man I'm courting? I took it upon myself to protect you from a man who's using you. Her laugh was sharp, humorless. Oh, that's rich. You're protecting me now? After 2 years of pretending I don't exist? I never pretended. What did you find? She cut him off, her voice hard. In your investigation. What terrible secrets did you uncover about poor Adrian? Rowan pulled the report from his jacket, held it out. Read it yourself. She didn't take it, didn't even look at it. I don't need to read it, she said, because whatever it says, it doesn't change the fact that you have no right to interfere in my life anymore. You gave up that right when you shut me out. He's in debt, Lillian. Serious debt. His estate is mortgaged, his creditors are closing in, and the only reason he's courting you is because your inheritance would solve all his problems. So? The single syllable hit him like a slap. So? He repeated. So he's using you. Maybe I don't care. She set the curry comb down, crossed her arms. Maybe I'm tired of waiting for something that's never going to happen. Maybe I'd rather be wanted for my money than not wanted at all. That's not... You can't believe that. Why not? It's true, isn't it? Her voice cracked just slightly, and she looked away. At least Adrian looks at me, talks to me, makes me feel like I matter. Even if it is about money, at least it's something. At least he's not afraid to be in the same room as me. I'm not afraid. Then what are you? She spun back to face him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. What are you, Rowan? Because you're not my guardian. You made that clear. You're not my friend. You stopped being that the day you started treating me like a stranger. So what are you? And why do you care who I marry if you can't even tell me why you pushed me away in the first place? The question hung between them, heavy and impossible. Tell her, something inside him screamed. Tell her the truth. Tell her you love her. Tell her you've been in love with her for years and you pushed her away because you were terrified of what that meant. Tell her, I'm someone who doesn't want to see you make a mistake you can't take back, he said instead. Wrong answer. He saw it in the way her shoulders fell, the way the light died in her eyes. Get out, she said quietly. Lillian, get out. Louder now. And take your report with you. I don't want it. I don't want your concern. I don't want your protection. I want you to leave me alone the way you've been doing for 2 years. If you marry him, that's my choice. The shout echoed through the stable, making the horses shift nervously. My choice, Rowan, not yours. You don't get to swoop in now and act like you care after everything you've done. You don't get to play the hero when you're the one who broke me. The admission seemed to surprise them both. Lillian's hand went to her mouth, like she could take the words back. Rowan felt them land in his chest like bullets. I didn't mean... She started. Yes, you did. His voice was rough. And you're right. I did break you. I know that. But letting Adrian Crowell use you isn't going to fix it. Maybe not. She wiped at her eyes roughly. But it's not your problem anymore, is it? You made sure of that. She walked past him, and this time when she left, Rowan knew he'd lost something he couldn't get back. Dad. The engagement was announced 3 weeks later. Rowan heard about it from Marcus, who delivered the news with the kind of careful neutrality that meant he was expecting an explosion. He didn't get one. Rowan just nodded, thanked him for the information, went back to the correspondence he'd been reviewing. Your Grace, Marcus said after a moment. Are you? I'm fine. You're not going to do anything? What would you have me do? Rowan looked up. I told her the truth. She didn't believe me. Or she did, and decided she didn't care. Either way, it's her choice. You're just going to let her marry him. I'm going to respect her decision, like I should have been doing all along. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're a coward. Excuse me? You heard me. Marcus crossed his arms. You've spent 2 years running from your feelings, and now you're going to hide behind respect and propriety while she marries a man who sees her as a bank account. That's not noble. That's cowardice. Watch yourself. No, you watch yourself. Marcus's voice rose. I've known you since you were 15 years old. I've watched you build this estate from nothing. I've seen you face down creditors and competitors and corrupt officials without flinching. But the one thing you are afraid of, the one thing that makes you run, It's being honest about what you feel. That's enough. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're about to lose the best thing that ever happened to you because you're too proud to admit you were wrong, too scared to tell her the truth. The truth is irrelevant, Rowan said coldly. She's made her choice. Then give her a reason to change it. How? By telling her I'm in love with her? The words burst out before he could stop them, sharp and bitter. By admitting I pushed her away because I was terrified of wanting her the way I did? That I've spent 2 years hating myself for it? That I still wake up thinking about her and go to sleep wishing things were different? The silence that followed was absolute. Yes, Marcus said finally. Exactly that. Rowan laughed. It sounded hollow. And what would that accomplish? She doesn't trust me anymore. Doesn't even like me. And I've given her every reason to feel that way. The best thing I can do for her now is stay out of her way and let her be happy. You think she's happy with Adrian Crowell? I think she deserves a chance to be, without me interfering. Marcus sighed, walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. You're wrong, he said quietly, about her not caring, about it being too late. But if you'd rather live with regret than take a risk, that's your choice. Just don't pretend it's for her sake. This is about you being afraid. He left before Rowan could respond. Not that Rowan had a response, because Marcus was right. He was afraid. Afraid of rejection, afraid of making things worse, afraid that if he told Lillian the truth, she'd look at him the way she'd looked at him in the stable, like he was a stranger who'd hurt her too many times to forgive. But more than anything, he was afraid that he'd already lost her, and there was nothing he could do to get her back. The wedding was set for 6 weeks from the engagement announcement. 6 weeks, 42 days. Rowan counted every one of them, watched as the estate filled with activity, dressmakers and caterers and florists transforming the halls into something beautiful, watched as Lillian went through the motions with a smile that never reached her eyes, watched as Adrian played the devoted fiancé, always touching her elbow, her shoulder, her hand in a way that made Rowan's jaw ache from clenching. And he said nothing, did nothing, kept his distance like he'd promised himself he would, until the night of the pre-wedding dinner, when Marcus appeared in his study with a bottle of whiskey and a look that meant trouble. She's miserable, Marcus said without preamble. What? Lillian. She's miserable. Anyone with eyes can see it. Rowan set down his pen. She's getting married in 2 days. It's normal to be nervous. This isn't nerves. This is regret. Marcus poured 2 glasses, pushed one across the desk. She doesn't want to marry him. Then she shouldn't. She thinks she has no choice. She has every choice. Not when the man she actually loves has spent 2 years convincing her she means nothing to him. The words hit like a punch to the gut. That's not... She doesn't... Rowan stopped, started again. She doesn't love me. Are you really that stupid? Marcus drained his glass. She's loved you since she was 16 years old. Everyone knows it, except apparently you. And instead of being honest with her, you pushed her away and let her think she wasn't good enough. So now she's marrying a man she doesn't love because she's convinced herself it's what she deserves. Rowan's hands shook. He pressed them flat against the desk. What am I supposed to do? The question came out raw. Walk in there and tell her not to marry him? Give her what reason, Marcus? That I love her? That I'm sorry? That I've been an idiot? Yes. All of that. Exactly that. And if she says no? Then at least you'll know you tried. At least you'll have been honest. Marcus stood, headed for the door. The dinner starts in an hour. Every noble family in the county will be there, including Adrian's creditors, though I doubt he knows that. Should be an interesting evening. He left Rowan alone with the whiskey and a choice: stay silent and let her go, or fight for her one last time. Rowan sat in his study for another 20 minutes after Marcus left, staring at the whiskey glass like it held answers. It didn't. The only thing it held was amber liquid and the reflection of a man who'd spent 2 years making the wrong choice over and over again. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against wood, paced to the window. The sun was setting, painting the estate in shades of gold and shadow. Carriages were already arriving for the dinner. He could see them rolling up the drive, hear the distant sound of voices and laughter. The whole county would be there tonight, watching, judging, waiting to see the Duke's ward marry into minor nobility with just enough scandal attached to make it interesting. and Adrian would play his part perfectly. The charming suitor, the devoted fiancé, the man who'd swept in and claimed what Rowan had been too much of a coward to fight for. Rowan's reflection stared back at him from the darkening window glass. He looked older than 30, harder, the kind of hard that came from holding everything in until it calcified into something you couldn't break even if you wanted to. He thought about what Marcus had said, about Lillian being miserable, about her thinking she had no choice, about her loving him. That part felt impossible. After everything he'd done, after 2 years of cold shoulders and formal distance and deliberate cruelty disguised as propriety. How could she still love him? But Marcus had never lied to him. Not once in 15 years. Rowan pressed his forehead against the cool glass and made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. He was going to that dinner, and he was going to tell the truth, even if it destroyed him. The ballroom was already packed when Rowan descended the stairs an hour later. He'd changed into formal evening wear, black coat, crisp white shirt, the silver cufflinks Lillian had given him 3 Christmases ago before everything went to hell. His hands were steady as he adjusted them, but his heart was beating like he'd run a mile. The crowd parted as he entered. It always did. Duke Halstead commanded that kind of space, not because people respected him, necessarily, but because they feared him, or at least feared disappointing him, which in Ellingridge County amounted to the same thing. He scanned the room, looking for Lillian. Found Adrian first. The man stood near the center of the ballroom, surrounded by a cluster of minor nobles who were laughing too loud at something he'd said. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man who'd already won. Rowan wanted to break his jaw. "Your Grace," a voice at his elbow. He turned to find Eleanor Pritchard, one of the county's most notorious gossips, smiling up at him with predatory interest. "What a surprise to see you here. I'd heard you weren't planning to attend." "Plans change," Rowan said shortly. "Indeed they do." Her eyes gleamed. "And how generous of you to host such a lovely dinner for your ward's engagement, though I must say, the match did come as something of a surprise." Adrian Crowell. "I wouldn't have thought him quite your standard." Translation. "I know he's broke and I'm dying to see how this plays out." "Miss Voss makes her own choices," Rowan said. "Of course. How progressive of you." Eleanor's smile sharpened, though one does wonder what her dear mother would have thought. She did entrust the girl to your care, after all. Such a responsibility. The barb hit exactly where she'd aimed it. Rowan's jaw tightened. "If you'll excuse me," he said, and moved away before she could land another blow. He found Lillian by the windows on the far side of the room, and the sight of her stopped him cold. She wore deep blue silk that made her skin glow in the candlelight. Her hair was pinned up, exposing the line of her neck, and she was smiling at something the woman next to her had said. But Marcus was right. The smile was wrong. Too bright, too fixed, like something she'd painted on and couldn't quite make believable. As if sensing his stare, she looked up. Their eyes met across the room. For a second, just a second, her mask slipped. He saw confusion, hurt, something that might have been hope before it got crushed under 2 years of disappointment. Then Adrian appeared at her side, slipping an arm around her waist in a gesture that was possessive enough to make Rowan's vision narrow at the edges. "There you are, darling," Adrian said, loud enough to carry. "I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost." Lillian's smile didn't waver, but Rowan saw her shoulders tense. "Just getting some air." "Well, we can't have the bride-to-be hiding in corners, can we?" Adrian pressed a kiss to her temple that made Rowan's hands curl into fists. "Come. There are people we need to greet." He steered her away before she could respond, and Rowan watched them go with something black and vicious churning in his chest. "Quite a display, isn't it?" Marcus had materialized beside him, champagne glass in hand. He looked annoyingly calm. "I'm going to kill him," Rowan said quietly. "Get in line. Half the creditors in this room are ahead of you." Marcus took a sip of champagne. "Word is the Harrington Bank representatives are here. And Lord Fairfax, who Adrian apparently owes £12,000. Should be an interesting evening." "You invited his creditors?" "I invited everyone who had a stake in this engagement. Seemed only fair." Marcus's expression was innocent. After all, Adrian's finances are about to become very much Lillian's problem. She should know what she's getting into. Rowan stared at him. "You're a devious bastard." I learned from the best. Marcus raised his glass in mock salute. Now, are you going to stand here glaring or are you going to do something about this? Before Rowan could answer, the dinner bell chimed. The dining room could seat 60, and tonight every chair was full. Rowan had been placed at the head of the table, his right as host, with Lillian and Adrian seated directly across from him, where he'd have to watch them all night. Marcus's doing, probably. Adrian was in fine form, holding court with stories about London and Paris, and a hunting trip in Scotland that Rowan was 90% sure he was exaggerating. The nobles around him ate it up, laughing and nodding and refilling his wine glass whenever it got low. Lillian barely touched her food. Rowan watched her push a piece of duck around her plate, her eyes distant. She'd smile when someone addressed her directly, make the appropriate responses. But the moment the attention shifted, she'd retreat back into herself. It was painful to watch. More painful because he'd done this to her. Turned someone bright and fierce into this hollow version who went through the motions of happiness without feeling any of it. Your Grace. A voice from his left. He turned to find Margaret Ashford, an older woman who'd been friends with Lillian's mother, watching him with sharp eyes. You're not eating. Not particularly hungry, he admitted. Neither is she. Margaret nodded toward Lillian. Hasn't been for weeks, from what I understand. One might think a woman about to marry the love of her life would have more of an appetite. Rowan didn't take the bait. One might think many things. Indeed. Margaret set down her fork. I knew Catherine Voss very well. Did you know that? I did. She was my dearest friend, and when she was dying, she made me promise to look after Lillian if anything happened to her. Of course, you'd already agreed to be her guardian, so I thought my services wouldn't be needed. Her gaze sharpened. I'm beginning to wonder if I was wrong about that. I've provided for Lillian. Provided for her? Margaret's laugh was quiet but cutting. Is that what you call what you've done? You've housed her, fed her, given her everything except what she actually needs. And what's that? Honesty, respect, the courtesy of being treated like a person instead of an obligation. She leaned closer, voice dropping. I know what you did 2 years ago, how you pushed her away, and I know why. Rowan's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Everyone with eyes knows you're in love with that girl. Everyone except apparently her, because you've been too proud or too frightened to admit it. Margaret's expression softened slightly. Catherine asked you to protect her daughter, not to break her heart, and then stand by while she marries a fortune hunter. She's an adult. She can make her own... Stop hiding behind that. The words were sharp, final. You owe her better. Catherine trusted you, Lillian trusted you, and you've repaid that trust by letting your fear control you. She stood, gathering her shawl. If you have any decency left, you'll stop this wedding before it's too late, because that girl deserves more than Adrian Crowell, and deep down, you know it. She swept away before he could respond, leaving Rowan alone with the weight of her words and the growing certainty that tonight was going to end badly, no matter what he did. But halfway through the third course, things started to unravel. It began with Lord Fairfax, a heavy-set man with a florid face who'd had too much wine and not enough sense. He stood, glass in hand, and cleared his throat loudly. A toast, he announced, to the happy couple. Everyone raised their glasses dutifully. Lillian looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. May your marriage be prosperous, Fairfax continued, and there was an edge to his voice that made Rowan tense. And may your financial troubles, both of them, find swift resolution. The room went very quiet. Adrian's smile froze. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Fairfax took a long drink. Because I know for a fact that you owe me £12,000, and I know that your creditors have been very patient. Some might say too patient. One might almost think they were waiting for you to marry into money before calling in their debts. This isn't the time. Adrian's face had gone red. Isn't it? Another voice. Rowan looked down the table to see Edmund Gray, a banker he recognized from the Harrington firm. Because I think Miss Voss deserves to know exactly what kind of financial arrangement she's entering into. Don't you agree, Your Grace? All eyes turned to Rowan. He could feel Lillian staring at him. could sense the room holding its breath, waiting to see what he'd do. This was it. The moment he'd been avoiding. The choice between staying silent and causing a scene that would destroy whatever fragile peace they'd built. Rowan set down his wine glass very carefully. "I think," he said quietly, "that Mr. Crowell should answer the question himself." Adrian shot to his feet. "This is outrageous. I won't sit here and be accused." "No one's accusing you of anything," Edmund Gray said mildly. "We're simply asking for clarity. Your estate is mortgaged. You have outstanding debts with at least 4 major creditors, and you're about to marry a woman whose inheritance would conveniently solve all those problems." He smiled. "Surely you can see how that might raise questions." "Lillian," Adrian turned to her, and his voice had taken on a pleading quality that made Rowan's skin crawl. "You know this isn't, you know I love you. The money doesn't matter." Lillian was very pale. She looked at Adrian, then at the men who'd spoken, then finally at Rowan. "Did you know about this?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Rowan could have lied, could have deflected, could have done any number of things that would have kept his hands clean. Instead, he told the truth. "Yes." The single word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. "You knew." Lillian stood slowly. Her hands were shaking. "You knew about his debts, about the creditors, about all of it." "Yes." "And you didn't tell me. I tried to tell you. You didn't want to hear it." Her laugh was brittle. "So you arranged this instead? Invited his creditors to my engagement dinner so they could humiliate him, humiliate me, in front of the entire county?" "I didn't invite them," Rowan said, though he knew exactly who had. "But I'm not sorry they're here. You deserve to know the truth." "The truth." She repeated the word like it tasted bad. "The truth is that you've spent 2 years punishing me for something I don't understand, and now you're trying to destroy the one chance I have at happiness, because you can't stand to see me move on." "That's not, isn't it?" Her voice rose. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like jealousy. Like you can't have me, so you don't want anyone else to either." "Lillian, please." Adrian reached for her. "Don't." She jerked away from him. "Don't touch me right now." "But darling, is it true?" She spun to face him. "The debts, the mortgage, all of it. Is it true?" Adrian's face worked through several expressions before landing on something that was probably meant to be contrite. "It's not as bad as they're making it sound." "How bad is it?" "I may have had some financial difficulties." "How bad?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "My father left the estate in disarray. I've been trying to fix it, but these things take time and money. Your inheritance would have helped, yes, but that doesn't mean would have helped." Lillian's voice was flat. "So that's why you courted me, why you proposed, because I could solve your problems." "No, I mean, yes, the timing was fortunate, but I do care for you. Truly, I—" "Get out!" Adrian blinked. "What?" "Get out." Lillian's hands were clenched at her sides. "Get out of this house. Get out of my life. We're done." "You don't mean that. You're upset, understandably, but—" "I mean it." Her voice cracked. "You used me. You lied to me. And I was stupid enough to believe you because I was so desperate to feel wanted that I ignored every warning sign." She turned to the room at large. "Dinner is over. Everyone can leave." "Lillian," Rowan started. "You too." She didn't look at him. "Especially you. We need to talk." "No, we don't." Now she did look at him, and the expression on her face made his chest hurt. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to swoop in and save me from my own mistakes when you're the reason I made them in the first place. That's not fair." "Fair?" Her laugh was sharp, edged with tears. "You want to talk about fair? You pushed me away 2 years ago with no explanation, treated me like I was nothing, made me feel like I'd done something wrong when all I did was grow up. And now you stand there acting like you have any right to an opinion on my life." The room was utterly silent. Every eye locked on them. Rowan knew he should stop, should let her have this moment, should do literally anything except what he was about to do. But he was done with silence, done with distance, done with protecting her from the truth, when the truth was the only thing that might save them both. "You want to know why I pushed you away?" The words came out rough, raw. "Fine, I'll tell you. I pushed you away because I was in love with you, because you were 18 and I was 30, and I had no right to feel the way I did. Because every time I looked at you, I wanted things I couldn't have. Because I was terrified that if I let myself get any closer, I'd cross a line I couldn't come back from. The silence that followed was absolute. Lillian stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You what? I'm in love with you. Saying it out loud felt like breaking, like bleeding, like finally admitting something he'd been holding in so long it had poisoned everything it touched. I have been for years, and I handled it badly. I know that. I pushed you away instead of being honest. Let you think you'd done something wrong when the only thing you did was exist in a way that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. You're lying, but her voice shook. I'm not. You can't be. If you felt that way, why would you… She stopped, started again. Why would you hurt me like that? Because I was a coward. The admission cost him, but he forced it out anyway. Because I thought pushing you away was the right thing to do, the noble thing. I thought if I kept my distance, you'd be safe from me, from what I wanted. And instead I just made you miserable and drove you into the arms of a man who saw you as a solution to his debts. Tears were streaming down Lillian's face now. You don't get to do this. You don't get to tell me this now after everything and expect it to fix anything. I know it doesn't fix anything, but you asked for the truth, and that's it. That's the truth. I love you. I've always loved you. And watching you marry Adrian Crowell would have killed me, but I was going to let it happen because I thought that's what you wanted. He took a step closer. But if there's any part of you that still cares, if there's any chance you could forgive me for being an idiot, then please, don't marry him. Don't settle for someone who wants your money when you deserve someone who wants you. Lillian shook her head slowly. You can't just, after 2 years of silence, you can't just say these things and expect, I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I've destroyed any trust you had in me. But I'm asking anyway because the alternative is watching you throw your life away on a man who doesn't love you. And I can't do that. I won't. This is insane. She wiped at her face roughly. You're insane. Both of you. Adrian lying about his debts, you confessing your feelings in front of half the county like it's some kind of performance. It's not a performance, Rowan said quietly. It's the truth. And I know the timing is terrible. I know this whole night has been a disaster. But I'm done hiding, done pretending. If you want to hate me for the rest of your life, fine. I've earned that. But you'll hate me knowing the truth, not because of more lies. Lillian looked around the room at the shocked faces, the whispered conversations already starting, the scandal that was about to consume them both. Then she looked back at Rowan, and her eyes were filled with something he couldn't read. I can't do this right now, she said finally. I can't. I need to think. She didn't finish, just turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind a stunned silence and a dinner party that had just become the scandal of the season. Adrian recovered first. Well, his voice was cold. I suppose that's that then. Congratulations, Your Grace. You've successfully destroyed my engagement and your ward's reputation in one evening. Quite the achievement. Her reputation will survive, Rowan said flatly. Yours won't. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You came into my home, courted a woman under my protection with the sole intention of using her for money, and then had the audacity to act wounded when you were exposed. Rowan's voice was ice. You're going to leave Ellingridge County, tonight, and you're not coming back. You can't make me… Can't I? Rowan looked past him to the creditors still seated at the table. Gentlemen, I believe Mr. Crowley owes you quite a bit of money. Money he won't be getting from Miss Voss. I wonder how patient you'll continue to be now that his prospects have dried up. Adrian's face went white. Lord Fairfax smiled. It wasn't pleasant. I wonder indeed. Adrian looked around the room, clearly searching for allies. He found none, just cold stares and calculating expressions. This isn't over, he said to Rowan. Yes, it is. Get out of my house. For a moment, Rowan thought Adrian might refuse, might make a scene. But then Edmund Grey stood, and several other men followed suit, and Adrian apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. He left without another word. The moment the door closed behind him, the room erupted into conversation. Rowan ignored it, turned to Marcus, who'd watched the whole thing from the sidelines with an expression of grim satisfaction. Where did she go? The stables, probably. That's where she always goes when things get bad. Marcus paused. You really just confessed your feelings in front of 60 witnesses. Apparently. Bold move. Stupid move, Rowan corrected. Maybe. Marcus's expression softened. But honest, finally. Rowan ran a hand through his hair. His heart was still racing. She hates me. Probably, but at least now she hates you for the right reasons. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Go talk to her, and this time try not to wait 2 years before telling the truth. Rowan found her exactly where Marcus said she'd be. The stables were dark except for a single lantern hanging near the tack room. Lillian stood in front of her mare's stall, forehead pressed against the horse's neck, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He stopped in the doorway. Every instinct screamed at him to go to her, but he'd already done enough damage tonight. More than enough. I know you're there, she said without turning around. Her voice was wrecked. I can hear you breathing. I can leave if you want. What I want doesn't seem to matter much anymore. She pulled back from the horse, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. What I wanted was a simple life, a normal engagement, maybe even a quiet wedding. Instead, I got public humiliation and a love confession in front of everyone who matters in this county. I'm sorry. Are you? She turned finally, and even in the dim light he could see her eyes were red and swollen, because it looked like you enjoyed it, standing there exposing Adrian's lies, playing the hero. I wasn't trying to be a hero. Then what were you trying to be? Because you sure as hell weren't trying to be kind. She crossed her arms. You let me plan a wedding. Let me pick out a dress. Let me believe I was making a choice. And then you blew it all up at the last possible second in the most spectacular way you could manage. Would you have rather I let you marry him? I would have rather you told me the truth 2 years ago. The shout echoed through the stable. The horses shifted nervously. I would have rather you been honest about your feelings instead of pushing me away and making me think I'd done something wrong. I would have rather had a conversation like adults instead of whatever that disaster was back there. Rowan took a step forward. You're right. She blinked. What? You're right. About all of it. I handled everything wrong. I should have told you the truth 2 years ago. I should have trusted you enough to be honest instead of making decisions for you. He paused. But I didn't, and I can't take that back. All I can do is tell you now and hope it's not too late. Too late for what? Her voice cracked. What exactly are you asking me for, Rowan? Forgiveness? A second chance? Because I don't know if I have either of those things to give you right now. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know the truth, even if it doesn't change anything. Lillian laughed, but there was no humor in it. It changes everything. That's the problem. I spent 2 years convincing myself I was over you, that I'd moved on, that what I felt when I was younger was just a stupid crush that would fade. She pressed her hands to her face. And then you go and say those things, and I don't know what to feel anymore. Hope flickered in Rowan's chest. Dangerous, fragile hope. What do you want to feel? He asked quietly. I want to hate you. I want to be angry and hurt and done with all of this. She dropped her hands. But I can't. And that makes me angrier than anything else because after everything you've done, I still... She stopped, shook her head. You still what? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Why? The word came out sharp, accusing. Why does it matter now when it didn't matter 2 years ago? When it didn't matter all those times I tried to talk to you and you shut me down? When it didn't matter enough for you to fight for me before I got engaged to someone else? Because I was afraid, Rowan said, and the admission felt like ripping out his own heart. Because I thought the right thing to do was protect you from me, from what I wanted. Because I thought if I kept my distance, you'd be better off. Better off? Lillian's voice rose again. You think I was better off being miserable? Better off thinking you didn't care about me? Better off almost marrying a man who only wanted my money? No. I think I was an idiot who made the worst possible choices for the worst possible reasons. He moved closer, close enough to see the tears still tracking down her face. But I'm done making choices for you. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. If you want me to stay away, I'll stay away. But if there's any part of you that still cares, if there's any chance you could forgive me eventually, then tell me. Because I'll wait. however long it takes. She stared at him, and for a long moment the only sound was the horse's breathing and the distant noise from the house where the scandal was probably still unfolding. I need time, she said finally. I need to think, to figure out what I actually want instead of what I think I'm supposed to want. It wasn't rejection, but it wasn't acceptance either. Rowan nodded. Take all the time you need. And you won't try to influence me? Won't make decisions about my life behind my back? Never again. I promise. She studied his face like she was trying to decide if he meant it. Then she nodded once, sharp and final. I'm going to bed. We can talk more tomorrow. After... She gestured vaguely toward the house. After we deal with whatever mess is waiting for us. Lillian, tomorrow, Rowan. I can't do any more tonight. She walked past him without another word, and he let her go because it was what she'd asked for. But watching her leave felt like dying. The mess waiting for them turned out to be worse than Rowan had anticipated. By morning, the scandal had spread through Ellingridge County like wildfire. Every gossip and busybody was talking about the Duke's dramatic love confession and the broken engagement, and poor Lillian Voss caught in the middle of it all. Marcus delivered the news over breakfast, reading from a stack of hastily written notes that had arrived at dawn. Lady Pritchard is calling you a romantic fool. He flipped to the next note. Lord Ashworth thinks you've lost your mind. The Harrington Bank representatives want to know if you'll be covering Adrian's debts now that the engagement is off. Apparently they think you owe them for their trouble. He set down the papers. And Eleanor Pritchard has already told half the county that Lillian's reputation is ruined and no decent man will have her now. Rowan's jaw tightened. Eleanor Pritchard can go to hell. Agreed. But that doesn't solve the problem. Marcus poured coffee. The county is divided. Half think you did the right thing exposing Adrian. The other half think you sabotaged Lillian's engagement out of jealousy and have damaged her prospects irreparably. Her prospects are fine. Are they? Because the same people who would have congratulated her on marrying Adrian Crowell yesterday are now whispering that she must have known about his debts, that she was complicit, that the whole thing was a scheme gone wrong. That's insane. That's society. Marcus sat back. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. You've made enemies, Your Grace. People who think you overstepped. People who are going to make life very difficult for both of you if you don't handle this carefully. Before Rowan could respond, there was a sharp knock at the dining room door. A footman entered, looking nervous. Your Grace, there are several people here to see you. They say it's urgent. Who? Lord Fairfax, Mr. Edmund Grey, and... The footman swallowed. And the county magistrate, sir. Rowan and Marcus exchanged a look. Show them to my study, Rowan said. I'll be there in a moment. The footman fled. This should be interesting, Marcus said mildly. That's one word for it. The three men waiting in Rowan's study did not look happy. Lord Fairfax stood by the window, arms crossed. Edmund Grey sat in one of the leather chairs, expression unreadable. And Magistrate Crawford, a thin, sharp-faced man in his 50s, paced near the fireplace like he was working up to something unpleasant. Gentlemen, Rowan closed the door behind him. To what do I owe the pleasure? Cut the pleasantries, Halstead. Fairfax turned from the window. We have a problem. Do we? Adrian Crowell has filed a formal complaint against you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Rowan kept his expression neutral. On what grounds? Defamation of character, intentional sabotage of his engagement, and... Crawford cleared his throat uncomfortably. Undue influence over your ward. Undue influence. He claims you've been controlling Miss Voss's decisions, that you deliberately prevented her from marrying him because of your own... Crawford hesitated. Personal attachment. Rowan's hands curled into fists. That's a lie. Is it? Edmund Grey spoke for the first time. Because from where we sat last night, it looked like you orchestrated that entire scene. The creditors showing up, the public confrontation, the dramatic confession. He leaned forward. I'm not saying Adrian is innocent. We all know he's drowning in debt. But the optics here are terrible. A powerful duke sabotaging his ward's engagement, using his influence to isolate her, and then confessing his feelings in a room full of witnesses. I didn't sabotage anything. I exposed the truth. The truth as you saw it, Crawford said carefully. But Adrian has rights too, and he's claiming that your actions have damaged his reputation and his prospects. He wants financial compensation and another uncomfortable pause. He's suggesting that an investigation into your guardianship might be warranted. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. An investigation, Rowan repeated slowly. He's implying that your relationship with Miss Voss might be inappropriate. Fairfax grimaced. Look, none of us want to believe that, but the man is making noise, and in the current climate, with half the county already gossiping, we need to address it. There's nothing inappropriate about my relationship with Lillian. Then you won't mind an inquiry proving that? Crawford's tone was apologetic but firm. I'm sorry, Your Grace. But given the circumstances, I have to investigate. It's my duty. Rowan felt the trap closing around him. Adrian was smarter than he'd given him credit for. Couldn't win Lillian's money, so he'd found another way to strike back, by attacking Rowan's reputation and putting Lillian in an impossible position. How long will this investigation take? A few weeks, maybe longer. Crawford shifted his weight. In the meantime, I'd suggest you maintain distance from Miss Voss. For appearances. Absolutely not. Your Grace, she just had her engagement broken. She's dealing with scandal and gossip and half the county judging her. You want me to abandon her now? We want you to protect her reputation, Edmund Gray said. And yours. If you're seen together while this investigation is ongoing, it will only fuel speculation, make things worse. Things are already worse. Pushing her away again isn't going to help. It might be your only option. Fairfax's expression was grim. Adrian has allies. People who are willing to testify that they've seen you behaving inappropriately with her, that you've been too involved in her life, that your guardianship crossed lines it shouldn't have. That's who? Eleanor Pritchard, for one. She's claiming she witnessed you and Miss Voss in compromising situations over the years. Fairfax held up a hand before Rowan could explode. I know it's probably exaggerated or outright fabricated, but she's willing to swear to it, and there are others who'll back her up if it means bringing you down a peg. Rowan's vision narrowed. This is about more than Adrian. Of course it is. Edmund Gray stood. You've made a lot of enemies in this county, Halstead. People who resent your power, your wealth, your influence. This scandal gives them an opportunity to challenge you, and they're going to take it. Let them try. Don't be foolish. Crawford's voice sharpened. You're a duke. You have resources. But you're not untouchable. If enough people come forward with testimony, true or false, it could destroy you. And more importantly, it could destroy Miss Voss. Is that what you want? No, it wasn't. But backing down felt like surrender. What exactly are you suggesting I do? Rowan asked. The three men exchanged glances. Distance yourself from her, Fairfax said finally. Publicly. Make it clear that your relationship has always been purely professional. That last night was an aberration brought on by concern for her welfare, nothing more. You want me to lie? We want you to survive this. Crawford's expression was almost sympathetic. And we want Miss Voss to survive it too. Right now, the best thing you can do for her is step back. Let the investigation run its course. Prove that there's nothing inappropriate happening. And if I refuse? Then Adrian will push harder. More people will come forward. The scandal will get bigger. Edmund Gray's voice was flat. And eventually, someone will suggest that Miss Voss's guardianship should be transferred to someone else. Someone without a personal stake in her future. The threat was clear. Step back, or lose her completely. Rowan looked at the three men and saw the reality of his situation. They weren't his enemies. They were trying to help in their own misguided way. But their solution required him to do the one thing he'd promised Lillian he wouldn't do again. Push her away. I need to talk to her first, he said. That's probably not wise. I don't care. I'm not making decisions about her life without talking to her first. Not again. Crawford sighed. Fine. But do it quickly and privately. The last thing we need is more public drama. They left, and Rowan stood alone in his study, feeling the walls close in. He found Lillian in the library, curled up in the same window seat where he'd confronted her about Adrian weeks ago. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. We need to talk, he said. She didn't look up from her book. I thought we were doing that tomorrow. Something's happened. Now she looked up, saw his expression, closed the book slowly. What? He told her. Everything. Adrian's complaint, the investigation, the suggestion that he distance himself from her. He didn't soften it or sugarcoat it, just laid out the facts and watched her face go pale. An investigation, she repeated when he finished, into whether they think we've been, I know. That's insane. You've barely looked at me for 2 years, let alone, she stopped, pressed her hands to her face. This is a nightmare. It's going to be fine. The investigation won't find anything because there's nothing to find. It doesn't matter what they find. She dropped her hands. The damage is already done. People are talking, making assumptions. Eleanor Pritchard is probably telling everyone who'll listen that we've been carrying on for years. Let her talk. We know the truth. The truth doesn't matter when reputation is everything. Her voice broke slightly. My reputation is already destroyed. Yours will be too if we're not careful. I don't care about my reputation. Well, I care about yours. She stood, and there was something fierce in her expression. You've worked your whole life to build this estate, to earn respect. I'm not going to let Adrian Crowell and his creditors destroy that because of me. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? If I hadn't agreed to court him, then he would have found another target. This isn't on you, Lillian. It's on him. And the people who are using this as an excuse to come after me. She crossed the room, stood in front of him. For the first time in 2 years, there was no distance between them. What did Crawford suggest you do? She asked quietly. Rowan hesitated. Distance myself from you, publicly. For how long? Until the investigation is over. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. And you think that's the right move? I think it's what everyone expects me to do, but I'm not doing it. Why not? Because I just got you back. I'm not losing you again. You didn't get me back. But her voice was soft. I haven't decided anything yet. I told you I needed time. I know, and you can have all the time you need. But I'm not going to pretend you don't exist while you figure it out. I did that before, and it nearly destroyed both of us. Lillian's eyes were bright. If you don't distance yourself, they'll use it against you. They'll say it proves you've been inappropriate, that you can't be trusted with my guardianship. Then they'll say it. I don't care. You should care, because if they transfer my guardianship to someone else, you'll have no say in my life at all. She reached up, touched his face. The gesture was so unexpected, he froze. I don't want that. Even angry as I am, even confused and hurt and not sure what I feel, I don't want you cut out of my life completely. Then what do you want? She was quiet for a long moment. Her hand was still on his face, thumb brushing across his cheekbone in a way that made it hard to breathe. I want to make a choice for once, she said finally. Not have one made for me. Not by you, not by Crawford, not by anyone. She dropped her hand, and I think the only way to do that is to leave. The words hit him like a physical blow. Leave. Ellingridge County, the estate, all of it. She stepped back. I have money, not the inheritance. That's locked until I marry. But I have some savings, enough to rent a place somewhere, start over where no one knows me or cares about the scandal. Lillian, you can't just, can't I? What's keeping me here? A broken engagement, a county full of people who think I'm either a victim or a schemer? You? She smiled, but it was sad. I love this place. It's the only home I've really known, but staying here means living under a microscope, having every decision judged and analyzed. I can't do that anymore. Where would you go? I don't know yet. London, maybe. Or north, somewhere I can think without everyone watching. Rowan felt panic claw at his chest. If you leave now, they'll say you're running, that you have something to hide. Let them say it. I don't care anymore. She moved to the door. I'm tired, Rowan. Tired of trying to be what everyone expects. Tired of caring what people think. Tired of waiting for my life to start while everyone else controls it. Don't do this, she turned. Give me one good reason why I should stay. Because I love you, he wanted to say. Because losing you again would kill me. Because I've already made too many mistakes, and I can't handle making another one. But looking at her face, at the exhaustion and hurt and desperate need for freedom, he knew none of those reasons were good enough. She needed to choose for herself, without his influence, even if it destroyed him. I can't, he said quietly. I can't give you a reason to stay if the only reason is me. You need to want to be here. Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe, or relief. Then I'm leaving, tomorrow morning, before the gossip gets worse and the investigation starts and everything becomes impossible. She paused. Thank you for being honest, for not trying to stop me. She left before he could respond. And Rowan stood alone in the library, wondering how telling the truth had somehow made everything worse. By the time the sun set, word had spread that Lillian was leaving. Marcus found Rowan in the study, staring at paperwork he wasn't actually reading. She's packing, Marcus said without preamble. Says she'll be gone by dawn. I know. You're just going to let her go? What choice do I have? She's right. Staying here means living in a fishbowl, having every move scrutinized. She deserves better than that. She deserves you fighting for her. I did fight for her, last night, and it blew up in both our faces. Rowan set down his pen. Maybe the best thing I can do for her now is let her make her own choices without me interfering. Or maybe you're using that as an excuse to avoid taking a real risk. Marcus's voice was sharp. You told her you loved her in front of 60 people. That was brave. But now you're hiding behind propriety and letting her walk away. That's cowardice. She doesn't want me to stop her. Did you ask? Rowan's jaw tightened. She asked me for a reason to stay. I couldn't give her one. Couldn't? Or wouldn't? Marcus moved closer. You've spent 2 years keeping your feelings hidden because you thought it was the right thing to do. And now you're doing it again. Letting her leave because you think that's what she needs. But maybe what she actually needs is for you to stop being noble and start being honest about what you want. I told her what I want. She knows. Knowing isn't the same as hearing it when it matters. Marcus grabbed his coat. I'm going to check on the horses. You should think about whether you can actually live with letting her go. Because once she leaves, there's no guarantee she comes back. He left Rowan alone with that thought and a growing sense of panic. Rowan didn't sleep that night. Just paced his room, watching the hours tick by, knowing that when morning came, Lillian would be gone and he'd have no one to blame but himself. Around 3 a.m, he gave up on sleep entirely and went downstairs. The house was dark and silent. He walked through the halls they'd walked together when she was younger, back when things were simple, and he could pretend his feelings didn't exist. He ended up in the south pasture where this whole mess had started, where he'd first realized he loved her. The sky was just beginning to lighten at the edges. Dawn was coming, and with it, the moment he'd lose her for good. Couldn't sleep either? He spun. Lillian stood a few feet away, wrapped in a cloak against the early morning chill. She looked as exhausted as he felt. What are you doing out here? He asked. Same as you, I think. Trying to figure out if I'm making the right choice. She moved closer. I keep thinking about what you said, about not being able to give me a reason to stay. Lillian, let me finish. She held up a hand. You said you couldn't give me a reason if the only reason was you, and I've been thinking about that all night, about what it means. It means I don't want to be the thing that keeps you trapped here. You deserve freedom, choice, all the things I've denied you. But what if I choose you? The word stopped him cold. What? What if I choose you? She repeated, and her voice was stronger now. What if I decide that yes, I'm angry, yes, I'm hurt, yes, you made mistakes, but I also know that I've spent 2 years trying to stop loving you, and I can't. What if I choose to stay and try to work through this instead of running? Hope, dangerous, impossible hope, bloomed in his chest. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. That's the point. I'm not staying because I'm obligated. Not because you want me to. I'm staying because I want to. Because as messy and complicated as this is, I'd rather fight through it with you than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I'd had the courage to try. Rowan couldn't breathe. You're sure? No, I'm terrified. This could be the biggest mistake I ever make. She smiled, and it was real this time. But it's my mistake to make, and I'm choosing it. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. She came willingly, pressing her face against his chest. "I'm still angry with you," she said, muffled against his coat. "I know. And it's going to take time for me to trust you again." "I know that too. And we're going to have to deal with the investigation and the scandal, and everyone having opinions about our lives. We'll handle it." He pressed his face into her hair, breathing her in. Together. She pulled back enough to look up at him. "You promise? No more making decisions for me? No more pushing me away because you think you know what's best?" "I promise. Partners, equals. From now on." "Good." She smiled. "Now kiss me before I lose my nerve and change my mind." He did. And the world didn't end. The scandal didn't magically disappear. The investigation would still happen, the gossip would still spread, and half the county would still have opinions about whether they were making a terrible mistake. But none of that mattered, because for the first time in 2 years, Rowan wasn't alone. And neither was she. Gosit. The first person who showed up at the estate that morning was Eleanor Pritchard. She arrived just after breakfast, face pinched with disapproval, ready to deliver whatever judgment she'd prepared. She found Rowan and Lillian in the dining room, eating together for the first time in 2 years. "Your Grace," Eleanor said icily. "Miss Voss, I heard you were leaving, my dear. I came to wish you well on your journey." "I'm not leaving," Lillian said calmly. "I've decided to stay." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Stay. Here. With him." "Yes. After everything that's happened? After the scandal? My dear girl, think of your reputation." "My reputation is mine to manage, Lady Pritchard, not yours." Lillian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "And I'm choosing to stay because this is my home, because the people here are my family, and because I'm tired of making choices based on what other people think I should do." "Your Grace," Eleanor turned to Rowan, "surely you can see how this looks. The two of you, living under the same roof while an investigation is pending." "The investigation will find nothing inappropriate because there's nothing inappropriate happening," Rowan said flatly. "Lillian is staying because she chooses to, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." Eleanor's face flushed. "This is unconscionable. I'll be reporting this to Magistrate Crawford immediately." "Please do," Lillian said. "And while you're at it, you can tell him that any testimony you plan to give about my relationship with the Duke is fabricated, because we both know you've never witnessed anything improper. You're just looking for an excuse to cause trouble." "How dare you? How dare I?" Lillian stood. "You've spent the last 2 years treating me like a charity case, gossiping about me, making snide comments about my situation. And now you want to act concerned about my welfare? Save it. We both know this isn't about protecting me. It's about bringing down someone you resent." Eleanor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Then she turned on her heel and swept out without another word. The moment she was gone, Lillian sat back down, hands shaking. "That was..." She laughed. "I've wanted to do that for years." Rowan reached across the table, took her hand. "You were magnificent." "I was terrified, but also exhilarated." She squeezed his fingers. "Is this what it feels like? Making your own choices? Standing up for yourself? Gets easier with practice." "Good. Because I have a feeling we're going to be doing a lot of it in the coming weeks." She was right. By noon, 3 more visitors had arrived, all with opinions, all ready to share them. And Rowan and Lillian faced them together, united for the first time in 2 years. It wasn't easy. It wasn't smooth. But it was theirs. The breaking point came 3 days later. Adrian Crowell returned to Ellingridge County with a lawyer and enough evidence, fabricated or otherwise, to make the investigation turn serious. He showed up at the magistrate's office with witness statements claiming he'd seen Rowan and Lillian in compromising positions. Letters that supposedly proved their relationship had been inappropriate for years. Financial records suggesting Rowan had been using Lillian's inheritance for his own benefit. All lies, but convincing lies. Crawford called them both in for questioning. The magistrate's office was small and stuffy, and Crawford looked uncomfortable as he laid out the accusations. Mr. Crowell claims he has evidence of an improper relationship dating back 3 years, Crawford said, not meeting their eyes. He's provided testimony from several witnesses. Let me guess, Lillian interrupted. Eleanor Pritchard, the Ashworths, maybe a few of Adrian's creditors who are looking for any way to get their money back. Crawford's silence was confirmation. This is ridiculous, Rowan said. None of those people have spent significant time at the estate. They couldn't possibly have witnessed anything because there's nothing to witness. Nevertheless, the accusations have been made, and given the circumstances of the broken engagement, I have to investigate thoroughly. Crawford pulled out a thick folder. There are also questions about financial irregularities, specifically about Miss Voss's inheritance and how it's been managed. The inheritance is in a trust, Rowan said coldly. Managed by the Harrington Bank. I have no access to it, and never have. Mr. Crowell suggests otherwise. Mr. Crowell is a liar who's angry his scheme didn't work. Lillian's voice was calm but hard. He wanted my money. When he couldn't get it through marriage, he decided to destroy the person who exposed him. This entire investigation is revenge. That may be true, but I still have to follow procedure. Crawford looked genuinely apologetic. I'm going to need access to all financial records related to Miss Voss's guardianship. Estate accounts, correspondence, everything. Fine, Rowan said. You'll have it by tomorrow. And I'll need to speak with both of you separately. Get your versions of events. Also fine, Crawford nodded, then hesitated. There's one more thing, Mr. Crowell is petitioning to have Miss Voss's guardianship transferred to a neutral party pending the outcome of the investigation. He claims that leaving her in your care while these allegations are being examined creates a conflict of interest. The room went very cold. Absolutely not, Rowan said. It's not up to you, Your Grace. If there's evidence of impropriety, there isn't. Then the investigation will prove that. But until it does, the court may decide that Miss Voss needs protection from potential undue influence. Protection from the man who raised me? Lillian's voice rose. From the person who's looked after me for 11 years? That's insane. It's procedure, Crawford said quietly. And given the circumstances, it's hard to argue against. You're living in his house, dependent on him financially. If he has been influencing your decisions, he hasn't. Then you won't mind proving that to the court. Lillian stood abruptly. This is exactly what Adrian wants, to separate us, to make me vulnerable. And you're playing right into his hands. I'm doing my job, Miss Voss. Nothing more. Your job is to protect people. Right now you're protecting a con artist and punishing the man who exposed him. She grabbed her coat. I need air. She left before either of them could stop her. Crawford sighed. Your Grace, don't. Rowan stood. Just tell me what you need for this investigation, and I'll provide it. But I'm not stepping aside. I'm not leaving her unprotected while Adrian circles like a vulture. And if the court tries to transfer her guardianship, I'll fight it with everything I have. That may make things worse. Then they'll be worse. But I'm not abandoning her. Not again. He left before Crawford could respond, following Lillian out into a cold afternoon that matched the ice in his veins. This wasn't just about scandal anymore. It was about survival, and Rowan was done playing by rules that were designed to tear them apart. Rowan found Lillian in the rose garden, the same place he'd watched her walk with Adrian weeks ago. She stood with her back to him, arms wrapped around herself against the wind. I'm not leaving, she said without turning, if that's what you came to say. I know. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. I came to apologize. For what? You didn't do anything wrong. I let this happen. I should have anticipated that Adrian would strike back. Should have protected you better. Now she did turn, and her expression was sharp. Stop that. Stop what? Taking responsibility for things you can't control. Adrian is doing this because he's vindictive and desperate. That's on him, not you. She moved closer. And I don't need you to protect me. I need you to stand with me. There's a difference. The distinction hit harder than it should have. For 2 years, Rowan had been trying to protect her by pushing her away. Now she was asking for something entirely different, partnership, not protection. You're right, he said. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing too while you're at it. But there was no heat in the words. We need a plan. Crawford is going to dig through everything. Adrian has witnesses willing to lie. And if the court transfers my guardianship, we lose any legal standing to fight back. Then we need to prove the witnesses are lying before that happens. How? Eleanor Pritchard will swear she saw us together. The Ashworths will back her up because they've always resented you. And Adrian's creditors will say whatever they think will get them paid. Lillian paced. We can't fight testimony with denial. We need evidence, something that proves Adrian orchestrated this whole thing. Rowan's mind was already working through possibilities. Marcus said Adrian's creditors were getting impatient. If we can prove they're colluding with him, offering to forgive debts in exchange for testimony, that discredits everything. How do we prove that? We follow the money. Find out who's paying Adrian's legal fees, who's funding this complaint. Because a man drowning in debt doesn't suddenly have resources for lawyers and witness statements unless someone's backing him. Lillian stopped pacing. You think someone else is behind this? I think Adrian is a tool. Someone's using him to get at me. Who would want to do that? Rowan had a few ideas, rivals he'd outmaneuvered in business, nobles who resented his influence, maybe even someone with a personal grudge. But speculation wouldn't help. Let me talk to Marcus. He has contacts. If there's money changing hands, he'll find it. And what do? You stay visible, go into town, attend church. Show everyone that you're not hiding and you're not afraid. He caught her hand. And you don't let them see you break. No matter what they say or how they look at you, you hold your head high and make them question whether the gossip could possibly be true. Her fingers tightened around his. That sounds exhausting. It will be. But it's how we win, by refusing to play the role they've written for us. She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, let's do it. Marcus had news by that evening. He arrived at the study just after dinner, looking grimly satisfied. Adrian's legal fees are being paid by a firm in London, he said without preamble. High-end, expensive, way beyond what he could afford. Who's funding it? Rowan asked. That's where it gets interesting. The payments are coming from a trust, anonymous, but I did some digging. Marcus pulled out a ledger. The trust was established 6 months ago, right around the time Adrian's father died and he inherited the debt. So someone knew he was desperate and set this up in advance. Looks that way, and there's more. Marcus flipped a page. 3 of the witnesses Adrian's brought forward, they've all had recent financial windfalls, small amounts, nothing obvious, but enough to make me suspicious. Rowan leaned forward. Eleanor Pritchard? Got £500 last month. Claimed it was from a distant relative, but I can't find any record of the relative existing. The Ashworths? Similar story. £1,000 divided between them. Said it was an investment that paid off, but the investment company doesn't exist. Someone's paying them to lie. Rowan's jaw tightened. Who has that kind of money and that kind of grudge? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, there's one name that keeps coming up, indirectly, but it's there. Who? Lord Pemberton. The name landed like a punch. Lord Pemberton, one of the wealthiest men in the region, a rival Rowan had beaten in a land dispute 5 years ago. A man who held grudges like other people held investments. He's funding Adrian's complaint, Rowan said slowly, using him to attack me through Lillian. That's my guess. I can't prove it yet. The trust is buried under enough legal layers that it'll take time to trace back to him. But the timing fits. The amounts fit. And Pemberton has the resources and the motive. Rowan stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the estate stretched into darkness. His estate, built from nothing, defended against every challenge, and now under attack from a man using his feelings for Lillian as a weapon. Can we expose him before the court hearing? He asked. Maybe, if we push hard enough, but Pemberton's smart. He'll have covered his tracks. And even if we prove he's behind it, that doesn't necessarily invalidate the testimony. The witnesses could claim they're telling the truth regardless of who's paying them. Then we need something else. Something that proves Adrian's accusations are false. Like what? Rowan turned. Like Adrian himself admitting it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You think he'll confess? I think he's arrogant enough to slip up if we push the right buttons. He wants money. He wants revenge. If we can get him talking, make him think he's won, he might say something we can use. That's risky. Everything about this is risky. But we're running out of time. Crawford wants answers in a week. If we don't have something by then, the court could transfer Lillian's guardianship and we'll have no leverage left. Marcus nodded slowly. All right, I'll set something up, but you're going to need help. Someone Adrian trusts enough to let his guard down around. Who? Leave that to me. Marcus headed for the door. In the meantime, keep Lillian visible like you said. The more normal you two appear, the harder it is for people to believe the accusations. He left, and Rowan was alone with a plan that felt too fragile to work, but it was all they had. The next 3 days were brutal. Lillian went into town exactly as Rowan had suggested. She attended market day, visited the church, made social calls on families who'd known her mother, and everywhere she went, people whispered. Some looked at her with pity, some with judgment, a few with outright hostility. But she never flinched, never looked away, just smiled politely, and went about her business like she had nothing to hide. Rowan watched from a distance, pride and fury warring in his chest, pride that she was handling it with such grace, fury at the people who made it necessary. On the third day, Eleanor Pritchard cornered Lillian at the church. Rowan saw it happening from across the courtyard and started forward, but Lillian caught his eye and shook her head slightly. She wanted to handle this herself. Miss Voss, Eleanor's voice carried, how brave of you to show your face after everything that's happened. I have nothing to hide, Lady Pritchard, unlike some people. Eleanor's smile was vicious. Still defending him, I see, even after he's ruined your reputation and your prospects. Quite touching. My reputation is intact, and my prospects are my own business. Are they? Because from where I stand, you've thrown away a perfectly good engagement to a respectable man in favor of, what? Living in sin with your guardian? The accusation hung in the air. People nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. Lillian's expression didn't change. I broke my engagement because Adrian Crowell was using me for my money, a fact that's been well established. As for the Duke, he's been nothing but honorable in his guardianship of me. Anyone suggesting otherwise is either misinformed or malicious. Honorable, Eleanor laughed. Is that what you call a man who confesses his love in front of witnesses? Who drives away your suitors because he wants you for himself? I call him honest, which is more than I can say for you. Eleanor's face flushed. How dare I? Lillian stepped closer, voice dropping but somehow carrying farther. You've been spreading lies about me for years, making snide comments, undermining me at every turn. And now you have the audacity to act concerned about my welfare? We both know you're being paid to testify against the Duke. The question is, how much did it cost to buy your integrity? Because I'm genuinely curious. The courtyard had gone silent. Eleanor's mouth opened and closed. You have no proof, don't I? Lillian smiled. It wasn't kind. Maybe you should check with whoever deposited £500 into your account last month. The money from the distant relative who doesn't exist. Eleanor went white. I thought so. Lillian turned to the gathered crowd. Anyone else here receiving mysterious payments to lie about the Duke? Because now would be a good time to reconsider your testimony, before this goes to court and you're caught perjuring yourselves. No one spoke. Lillian nodded once. That's what I thought. Good day, Lady Pritchard. I hope the money was worth it. She walked away, head high, leaving Eleanor sputtering and the crowd buzzing with renewed speculation. Rowan met her at the carriage, fighting a smile. That was reckless, Lillian climbed in. Probably. But I'm tired of letting them control the narrative. If we're going down fighting. We're not going down. You sound very sure of that. I am. Marcus has a plan, and you just shook Eleanor Pritchard badly enough that she might reconsider her testimony, or she'll double down out of spite. Maybe, but everyone heard you call her out. That plant stout. Makes people wonder who else might be lying. He took her hand. You were brilliant. She squeezed his fingers. I had good motivation. The idea of them winning, of Adrian and whoever's backing him destroying what we're building, it makes me furious. Good. Hold on to that fury. We're going to need it. Marcus's plan came together 2 days later. He'd found someone willing to approach Adrian, someone the man trusted enough to speak freely around. Thomas Kelly, a former business associate of Adrian's father who'd fallen on hard times himself. Someone Adrian would see as a potential ally. The plan was simple. Get Adrian talking about the case, about his accusations, and record everything. It wasn't entirely legal, but Rowan was past caring about technicalities. They set it up at a pub in the next town over, somewhere Adrian felt safe. Marcus arranged for Thomas to be there, looking sympathetic and ready to listen. And Rowan waited in the back room with a recorder, hoping Adrian would say something, anything they could use. Adrian showed up right on time, already drunk from the sound of it. "Thomas!" His voice carried through the thin walls. "Didn't expect to see you here. Had some business nearby. Thought I'd stop for a drink." Thomas's voice was smooth. "How are you holding up? I heard about the engagement." "Don't remind me." The sound of a chair scraping. "Thought I had it all worked out. Marry the girl, solve my problems. Everyone's happy. But that bastard Halstead had to ruin everything. Terrible luck." "Luck nothing. He did it on purpose. Brought my creditors to the dinner, exposed all my debts, made me look like a fortune hunter in front of the entire county." "Well, weren't you?" Adrian laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "Of course I was. She's worth 60,000 pounds, Thomas. 60,000. That would have covered everything, and then some. But Halstead couldn't stand the idea of someone else having her." "Why do you think that is?" "Because he wants her for himself. Always has. Everyone can see it. The way he looks at her. The way he hovers. Man's been in love with his ward for years and too proud to admit it." "So you're doing what? Getting revenge?" "I'm getting justice." Adrian's voice hardened. "He destroyed my engagement, ruined my reputation. He deserves to lose something too. And if that means dragging his name through the mud and taking the girl away from him, good. Let him know how it feels." "By accusing him of impropriety?" "By telling the truth. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little. Maybe some of the witnesses are being encouraged to remember things more vividly than they actually happened. But the core of it is true. He's been inappropriate with her. Everyone knows it. Who's encouraging the witnesses?" A pause. Then, "Friend of mine, someone with resources, someone who wants to see Halstead brought down a few pegs." "Pemberton?" Another pause, longer this time. "How did you—" "Please. Everyone knows Pemberton has it out for Halstead, and suddenly you have money for lawyers and witnesses? Doesn't take a genius to connect the dots." Adrian laughed again. "Smart man. Yeah, Pemberton's been helpful, very helpful. Turns out there are a lot of people in this county who'd like to see the high and mighty Duke taken down. And if I'm the one to do it, even better. What happens when this goes to court? We win. Simple as that. I've got witnesses, I've got testimony, I've got enough smoke that even if there's no fire, people will believe there is. And once the court transfers the girl's guardianship, Halstead loses his leverage. Maybe I can't marry her anymore, but I can make sure he doesn't either." Seems like a lot of effort for revenge. "It's not just revenge. Pemberton's paying me. Not a fortune, but enough to keep my creditors at bay while I figure out my next move. And watching Halstead squirm? That's just a bonus." In the back room, Rowan listened to every word being committed to wax cylinder and felt something cold settle in his chest. Adrian wasn't just a desperate fortune hunter. He was a weapon, being wielded by someone who wanted to destroy everything Rowan had built. And he'd almost succeeded. The recording made it to Magistrate Crawford's desk the next morning. Crawford listened to the whole thing, his expression getting grimmer with each revelation. When it finished, he sat back and rubbed his face. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "Does it matter?" Rowan kept his voice neutral. "It's Adrian admitting he's being paid to lie, that his witnesses are being encouraged to exaggerate, that the whole complaint is revenge orchestrated by Lord Pemberton. It matters if I'm going to use it in court. This could be considered entrapment, illegally obtained evidence. Or it could be considered the truth. Which is more important?" Crawford was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Pemberton is a powerful man. If I accuse him of orchestrating this based on a recording that may not be admissible, then don't accuse him. Use the recording to discredit Adrian. Once his credibility is destroyed, the witnesses fall apart, and the investigation ends. And Pemberton walks away. For now. Rowan leaned forward. But we both know what he did. And so will everyone else who hears this. His reputation takes a hit even if he's never formally charged. Sometimes that's enough. Crawford studied him. You've thought this through. I've had time. And Miss Voss, what does she think about all this? She thinks the truth matters more than revenge. And so do I. Crawford nodded slowly. I'll need to verify the recording. Make sure it's authentic. But if it checks out, this changes everything. Adrian's complaint falls apart. The witnesses lose credibility, and I can close the investigation. How long? A few days, maybe a week. Crawford stood. I'll do my best to move quickly. I know this has been hard on both of you. Thank you. Crawford hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, I never believed the accusations. Known you too long, but I had to follow procedure. I understand. After he left, Rowan allowed himself one moment of relief. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they had a weapon now, and with Crawford on their side, they had a chance. The news spread through Ellingridge County like wildfire. Adrian Crowell had been caught lying. His witnesses were paid. The whole complaint was orchestrated by Lord Pemberton as revenge against the Duke. The gossip that had been vicious and judgmental turned confused and then sympathetic. Eleanor Pritchard tried to deny her involvement, but too many people had heard Lillian call her out. She retreated from public life, reputation in tatters. The Ashworths quietly retracted their statements. And Adrian left town in the dead of night, creditors finally losing patience and demanding payment he couldn't provide. By the end of the week, Crawford officially closed the investigation. No evidence of impropriety, no grounds for transferring guardianship. The Duke and his ward were cleared of all accusations. The relief was overwhelming. But the damage had been done. The scandal would follow them for months, maybe years. People would always wonder, always whisper. Rowan knew that, accepted it. What mattered was that Lillian was safe, that they'd fought together and won, that the truth had finally cut through the lies. They were in the library when Crawford delivered the formal closure notice. Lillian read it twice, as if making sure it was real. Then she set it down and started laughing. Not happy laughter. Something edged with hysteria and relief and exhaustion all at once. It's over, she said. It's actually over. It is. Adrian's gone. The investigation is closed. We won. We did. She looked up at him, eyes bright. So what happens now? It was the question Rowan had been avoiding. Because the investigation might be over, but the fundamental problem remained. He was her guardian. She was his ward, and he was in love with her. The county might have accepted their innocence, but they'd never accept a marriage. The age difference, the power imbalance, the years he'd spent raising her. It would be scandal on top of scandal. I don't know, he admitted. We got through the crisis, but the future is still complicated. Because you're worried about what people will think. Because I'm worried about putting you in an impossible position. You're 20 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. You shouldn't have to spend it defending a choice that will make you a pariah. Lillian stood, closing the distance between them. Let me worry about my own life. You promised to stop making decisions for me, remember? This is different. It's not. It's you being noble again, trying to protect me from consequences I'm willing to accept. She took his hands. I know what marrying you would mean. I know the gossip won't stop. I know people will judge. But I also know that I love you, and I'm not walking away from that because some people can't see past their own prejudices. Lillian, no, listen to me. Her grip tightened. I spent 2 years trying to get over you, trying to be practical, trying to make the safe choice. And it made me miserable. I don't want safe anymore. I want real. I want honest. I want to be with the person I love. Consequences be damned. Rowan's throat was tight. You deserve better than this. Better than me. That's not your decision to make. She smiled. You don't get to decide what I deserve. Only I get to do that. And I choose you, flaws and all, scandal and all. I choose this. For a moment, Rowan couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She was giving him everything he'd wanted, everything he'd been too afraid to ask for. and all he had to do was be brave enough to accept it. Are you sure? He asked finally. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. If we do this, there's no going back. The county will talk. Your reputation will take another hit, and you'll be tied to a man 12 years older than you who's made more mistakes than he can count. I know, and I don't care. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Do you want to marry me or not? The question was so direct it startled a laugh out of him. Yes, more than anything. Then ask me properly. Rowan had imagined this moment 100 times over the past 2 years. Always thought it would be elaborate, romantic, something worthy of the fairy tales Lillian used to read as a child. Instead, he dropped to one knee right there in the library, still holding her hands, and said the most honest thing he'd ever said in his life. Lillian Voss, I've loved you for years. I've made terrible choices trying to do the right thing. I've hurt you when I should have trusted you. But if you'll have me, if you'll take a chance on a man who's learning to be better, I promise to spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice. Will you marry me? Tears were streaming down her face. Yes, obviously yes. He stood, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her the way he'd wanted to for years. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Lillian was smiling. That was better than elaborate, she said. You deserve elaborate. I deserve honesty, and that was the most honest thing you've ever said to me. She touched his face. Don't take it back. Don't second-guess it. We're doing this. We're doing this, he agreed. And for the first time in 2 years, the future felt like something worth fighting for. The announcement of their engagement came 3 days later. Rowan made it public at the county assembly, standing in front of the same people who'd witnessed the disaster of Lillian's broken engagement to Adrian. The room went silent when he spoke. I know there's been talk, he said, about Miss Voss and myself, about the nature of our relationship, and I'm here to address that talk directly. He felt Lillian's hand slip into his, felt her squeeze his fingers in encouragement. I'm in love with Lillian Voss, he continued. I have been for years. I handled those feelings poorly. I let pride and fear control my actions, and in doing so, I hurt the person I care about most. Someone in the crowd gasped. Rowan ignored it. The investigation proved there was no impropriety in my guardianship, and there wasn't. But my feelings were real. They are real, and I'm done hiding them. He turned to Lillian. With her permission, I'd like to announce our engagement. Not because I'm her guardian, not because of obligation or duty, but because she's agreed to marry a flawed man who's learning to choose courage over fear. The room erupted. Some people applauded. Some looked scandalized. Margaret Ashford was crying. Lord Fairfax was grinning, and Eleanor Pritchard, in the back, looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. But Rowan didn't care about any of them. All he cared about was Lillian, standing beside him, smiling like the sun had finally broken through clouds. Think they're convinced? She murmured. I don't care if they are or not. Good. Neither do I. They left the assembly together, hand in hand, and stepped out into a future that was messy and complicated and absolutely theirs. The whispers would continue. The judgment would linger. Some people would never accept them, but they'd survived worse than gossip, and together they could survive anything. The morning after the assembly, Rowan woke to find Lillian already gone from the breakfast table. Marcus was there instead, reading a newspaper with an expression that suggested trouble. Where is she? Rowan asked. Town. Again. Marcus didn't look up. Said she had errands. What kind of errands? The kind where she faces down the gossip head-on instead of hiding from it. Marcus folded the paper. She's braver than both of us combined, you know that? Rowan did know. Had watched her walk into hostile crowds with her head high for weeks now. But it didn't make it easier. What's the paper saying? About what you'd expect. Half are calling it romantic. The other half are calling it scandalous. Eleanor Pritchard gave an interview claiming she knew all along there was something improper happening. Marcus snorted. Convenient how her memories improved now that the investigation cleared you. Let her talk. She's not the only one. Pemberton's released a statement denying any involvement with Adrian's complaint. Claims he barely knew the man. Of course he does. Public sentiment is shifting, though. People heard the recording. They know Adrian was lying and us, and they know someone with money was pulling strings. Marcus finally looked up. You won the battle, but Pemberton's still out there. Still has influence. He's not going to let this go. Then we'll deal with it when he makes his next move. You sound confident. I am, because now I'm not alone. Rowan poured coffee. Lillian and I are fighting this together. That changes everything. Marcus studied him for a moment, then smiled. It does. You're different, both of you. Stronger. Before Rowan could respond, there was a commotion at the front door. Voices. One of them Lillian's, raised in anger. Rowan was moving before he could think. Marcus right behind him. They found Lillian in the entrance hall, facing down a man Rowan recognized immediately. Lord Pemberton himself. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, and flanked by two men who looked like lawyers. What the hell are you doing in my house? Rowan demanded. Pemberton turned, expression cool. Good morning, Halstead. I came to discuss a private matter with Miss Voss, but she seems disinclined to listen. Because I have nothing to say to you, Lillian said, voice sharp. You orchestrated an entire investigation to destroy us. Why would I listen to anything you have to say? I did no such thing. As I've stated publicly, I barely knew Adrian Crowell. Whatever scheme he was running, don't. Rowan moved between them. Don't stand in my house and lie to my face. We have the recording. We know you funded his complaint, paid his witnesses, all of it. A recording obtained illegally, which proves nothing in a court of law. Maybe not in court, but it proves plenty everywhere else. The county knows what you did. Your reputation has already taken a hit. Pemberton's jaw tightened. My reputation is intact, unlike yours. You may have escaped formal charges, but everyone knows the truth. A duke lusting after his ward. A girl too blinded by misplaced loyalty to see she's being manipulated. Get out, Lillian said quietly. I'm trying to help you, my dear. Can't you see that? Halstead has used his position to isolate you, to control your choices, to make you dependent on him. And now he's convinced you to marry him. Pemberton shook his head. It's tragic, really. You could have had a normal life, a respectable marriage. Instead, you're throwing yourself away on a man who sees you as property. I said get out. I'm offering you an alternative. Pemberton pulled an envelope from his coat. I've arranged for a respectable family in London to take you in. You'd have distance from Halstead. Time to think clearly without his influence. And when you come of age to inherit, you'd have resources and independence. Lillian stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You're trying to separate us. I'm trying to save you from a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life. Why? The question came out sharp. Why do you care what happens to me? Because I knew your mother. She was a good woman who entrusted you to Halstead's care, and he's betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. My mother trusted him because he's a good man, better than you'll ever be. Pemberton's expression hardened. He's manipulated you. He's protected me, supported me. And yes, he made mistakes, but at least he had the courage to admit them and try to do better. Unlike you, hiding behind proxies and paid witnesses while pretending to be concerned about my welfare. Lillian stepped closer. I know what this is really about. It's not about me or my mother. It's about you hating that Rowan beat you in a land dispute 5 years ago and never bowing to your authority. This whole thing is wounded pride dressed up as concern. How dare you? How dare I? Lillian's voice rose. You tried to destroy the man I love because your ego couldn't handle losing to him. You funded a fortune hunter, paid people to lie, orchestrated an investigation that could have ruined both our lives. And now you have the audacity to stand in his house and act like you're doing me a favor? You're a child who doesn't understand. I'm a woman making my own choices, and I choose him. I choose this life. I choose to marry Rowan Halstead despite every obstacle you and people like you throw in our way. She pointed to the door. Now get out before I have you thrown out. Pemberton's face had gone red. He looked at Rowan. You've poisoned her against me. I didn't have to. You did that yourself. Rowan moved to stand beside Lillian. She's right. This was never about protecting her. It was about hurting me. And you failed. The investigation cleared us. Adrian's gone. Your witnesses recanted. All you've accomplished is exposing yourself as vindictive and petty. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You lost. Accept it with whatever dignity you have left and leave. Well, for a moment, Pemberton looked like he might argue. Then he straightened, adjusting his coat. You'll regret this, he said to Lillian. When you're older and wiser, you'll realize what you've given up, and by then it will be too late. The only thing I regret is wasting time listening to you. Lillian's voice was ice. Goodbye, Lord Pemberton. Don't come back. He left, lawyers trailing behind him, and the house fell silent. Lillian stood very still for a moment. Then she started shaking. Rowan caught her as her knees buckled, pulling her against his chest. I've got you, he murmured. You're all right. I can't believe She was half laughing, half crying. Did I really just throw Lord Pemberton out of the house? You did, spectacularly. He's going to make our lives hell. Let him try. We've survived worse than his petty revenge. Rowan pulled back enough to see her face. You were incredible. I was terrified. The terrified and incredible aren't mutually exclusive. He kissed her forehead. But you're right about one thing. He's not going to let this go quietly. We need to be prepared for whatever he does next. What can he do? The investigation is closed. We're engaged. There's nothing left for him to attack. Marcus cleared his throat from the doorway. Actually, there might be. They both turned. What do you mean? Rowan asked. Pemberton still has influence, friends and positions of power. He can't prove impropriety, but he can make things difficult in other ways. Block business deals, spread rumors, make life in Ellingridge County uncomfortable enough that you'd consider leaving. We're not leaving, Lillian said firmly. I know, but he might try to force your hand, and there's something else. Marcus hesitated. The trust holding your inheritance. It's managed by the Harrington Bank. Guess who sits on their board of directors? No, Rowan said. Pemberton. Has for years. And while he can't access the money directly, he could make arguments about its management, claim it needs additional oversight, delay its release when you marry. Lillian's face paled. He'd do that? In a heartbeat, especially if he thinks it would hurt you or Halstead. Then we fight him on that too, Rowan said. We'll get our own lawyers, challenge any attempts to interfere. We've beaten him once. We can do it again. Or, Lillian spoke slowly, thinking out loud, or we take away his leverage entirely. How? By not needing the inheritance, by proving we don't need his permission or his approval for anything. She turned to Rowan. The estate is profitable, right? We don't actually need my inheritance to survive. No, we're comfortable. But Lillian, that's your money. You shouldn't have to give it up because I'm not giving it up. I'm just choosing not to let it control our lives. If Pemberton wants to tie it up in legal battles, fine. Let him. We'll build our life without it, and when the time comes that he can't delay anymore, we'll get it. But in the meantime, we won't give him the satisfaction of seeing us struggle. Marcus was grinning. That's brilliant. You take away his weapon by not caring about it. Exactly. He wants to hurt us? He wants to see us fail? We don't give him the opportunity. Lillian looked at Rowan. What do you think? What did he think? He thought she was the smartest, bravest person he'd ever met. He thought her solution was perfect. And he thought he was the luckiest man alive that she'd chosen him. I think you're right, he said. We don't need the inheritance. We have each other. Everything else is just noise. She smiled, really smiled, the kind that took over her whole face and made his chest ache. Then it's settled. Pemberton can do his worst. We're moving forward. The wedding was set for 6 weeks later. Not a grand affair. Not the society event Adrian's wedding would have been. Just a simple ceremony at the estate church with the people who actually mattered. Marcus stood as best man. Margaret Ashford gave Lillian away, crying the entire time. Lord Fairfax attended, along with a handful of families who'd stood by them through the scandal. Eleanor Pritchard was notably absent. So was Lord Pemberton. But Rowan didn't care about the people who weren't there. He only cared about the woman walking toward him in a simple white dress, eyes bright with tears and happiness. The ceremony itself was brief, traditional vows, nothing elaborate. But when the minister asked if he took Lillian Voss to be his wife, Rowan's voice was steady and sure. I do. And when Lillian said the same, he felt something settle in his chest, like a piece that had been missing finally sliding into place. They were married, against all odds, Despite the scandal and the gossip and every obstacle thrown in their way, they'd won. The reception was held in the estate gardens, the same ones where Rowan had watched Lillian walk with Adrian months ago. But everything was different now. Lanterns hung from the trees, musicians played, food and wine flowed freely. And Lillian laughed, really laughed, the sound carrying across the garden like music. Rowan watched her dance with Marcus, then with Lord Fairfax, then with the minister's young son, who was delighted to have her attention. She's happy. He turned to find Margaret Ashford beside him, champagne glass in hand. She is, he agreed. And you? Are you happy? The question surprised him. Yes, more than I have any right to be. Margaret smiled. Good. You both deserve it, after everything you've been through. She paused. Catherine would have approved, you know. Would she? Of course, she loved Lillian more than anything, and she trusted you to keep her safe, not to keep her lonely. She'd want her daughter to be happy, even if it meant breaking a few conventions. The reassurance settled something Rowan hadn't realized still needed settling. Thank you, he said quietly. Margaret patted his arm. Now go dance with your wife before she forgets you exist. He did. Found Lillian at the edge of the dance floor, slightly breathless and glowing. Having fun? He asked. So much fun. Did you see Lord Fairfax trying to waltz? I think he stepped on my feet 6 times. Poor man's not known for his grace. Unlike you. She took his hand. Dance with me? Always. They moved onto the floor, and everything else faded. The guests, the music, the gardens, all of it background noise to the feeling of her in his arms. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, Lillian said softly. That this is too good to be real. It's real. We made it real. We did, didn't we? Against everyone who said we couldn't. She rested her head against his chest. I love you. I don't think I've said that enough today. You've said it exactly enough, but I'll never get tired of hearing it. Good. Because I plan to say it every day for the rest of our lives. That's a long time. Not long enough. He kissed her then, right there in the middle of the dance floor, and didn't care who saw. This was his life now, his future, and he was done being afraid of it. The months that followed weren't perfect. Pemberton made good on his threat to make things difficult. He blocked a business deal Rowan had been working on, spread rumors about financial instability at the estate, even tried to challenge the wedding's legitimacy on some obscure legal technicality. But every attack fell flat. The business deal got renegotiated with a different partner. The rumors were dismissed when the estate's financial records proved sound, and the legal challenge was laughed out of court. Pemberton's influence was waning. People were tired of his vendetta, tired of the drama. And slowly, grudgingly, Ellingridge County began to accept that the Duke and his former ward were genuinely happy together. The gossip didn't stop entirely, probably never would, but it lost its venom. Became something people talked about with curiosity rather than judgment, and Rowan and Lillian learned to live with it. A year after the wedding, Lillian's inheritance finally came through. Pemberton had delayed as long as he legally could, but eventually even his lawyers ran out of excuses. The money was released, all £60,000 of it, and deposited into an account in Lillian's name. She looked at the bank statement for a long time. £60,000, she said finally. I could do a lot with this. You could, Rowan agreed. They were in the study going over the estate accounts like they used to before everything went wrong. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we should invest it in the estate, expand the orchards like I wanted to years ago, maybe buy the adjacent property, build something that's ours together. You don't have to use it for the estate. It's your money. You could do whatever you want with it. I know. And what I want is to build a future with you, a real future, not one where we're constantly looking over our shoulders waiting for the next attack. She smiled. Besides, I've always wanted those orchards. Rowan laughed. Then we'll plan orchards, as many as you want. Careful. I might take you up on that. Please do. She leaned over, kissed him. Have I mentioned I love you today? Twice. But I'm keeping count. Good. Because I love you. Even when you're being ridiculous about my money. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being respectful. You're being noble. Again, we've talked about this. Have we? Yes. The part where you stop trying to protect me from things I'm choosing freely, including using my money to invest in our future. She pulled back. Partners, remember? Equals. You don't get to be noble about the money any more than I get to be noble about the estate management. She was right. Of course she was right. Partners, he agreed. Equals. Orchards and all. Orchards and all. Eames. The expansion took 2 years. 2 years of planning and building and occasional setbacks. 2 years of watching saplings grow into young trees. 2 years of Lillian working alongside the laborers, sleeves rolled up, dirt under her fingernails, looking more alive than Rowan had ever seen her. The county watched, some with lingering disapproval, but most with growing respect, because the Duchess, people had started calling her that, even though she insisted on being just Lillian, wasn't sitting in a parlor playing at gentility. She was building something real, working alongside people who'd once gossiped about her, proving that she belonged here not because of her husband's title, but because she'd earned it. And slowly, the narrative changed. She wasn't the Duke's scandalous young wife anymore. She was the woman who'd transformed a struggling estate into one of the most prosperous in the region, the woman who'd stood up to Lord Pemberton and won, the woman who'd chosen courage over convention and made it work. Respect was grudging at first, then genuine, then something close to admiration. By the time the orchards were mature enough to produce their first real harvest, Lillian had become a fixture in county society in her own right. Not as Rowan's wife, not as the former ward, just as Lillian, a force to be reckoned with. 3 years after the wedding, Lord Pemberton died. Heart failure, the doctors said, quick and relatively painless. Rowan felt nothing when he heard the news. No satisfaction, no relief, just a vague sense that a chapter had finally closed. Lillian had a different reaction. "I should feel something," she said that evening. They were in the library, the same room where so much had happened between them. "He tried to destroy us. I should be glad he's gone. But you're not." "No, I just feel tired, like I wasted energy being angry at him when I could have been focusing on us." She curled into his side. "Is that terrible?" "It's human. He was a bitter old man who made himself miserable trying to make us miserable. Being angry at him now would give him more power than he deserves." "I suppose you're right." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been? If you told me the truth earlier? If Adrian had never happened? If Pemberton had just left us alone?" "Sometimes, but I try not to dwell on it." "Why not?" "Because I can't change the past. All I can do is make sure the present is worth the struggle it took to get here." He kissed the top of her head. "And it is. Worth it. Every moment. Even the terrible parts? Especially the terrible parts. They made us who we are, taught us what matters. I wouldn't trade that." She tilted her head back to look at him. "You've gotten very wise in your old age, man." "I'm 33. Ancient." "You married an ancient man." "I did. Best decision I ever made." She kissed him. "Even if you do insist on being philosophical about trauma. Someone has to be. You're too busy being practical. One of us has to be." They sat like that for a while, comfortable in the silence. Outside, the sun was setting over the orchards they'd built together. In the distance, Rowan could hear the workers finishing up for the day. Laughter, voices, life continuing. "We should have children," Lillian said suddenly. Rowan blinked. "We should?" "Yes. Not right away. But eventually, I think we'd be good at it." "You think so?" "I know so. You raised me, didn't you? Despite making a hash of the teenage years, you did a pretty good job overall." "That's a low bar." "Maybe, but I trust you, and I trust us. We've built something good here, something worth passing on. Children, a family." The idea filled Rowan with something warm and terrifying at the same time. "All right," he said. "Eventually, when we're ready." "When we're ready," she agreed, then smiled. "Look at us, planning a future, being hopeful. Who would have thought? Anyone who knows you, you've always been hopeful, even when I tried to crush it." You didn't crush it. You just made me work harder to hold on to it. She settled back against him. I'm glad I did. Hold on to it, I mean. Otherwise, I might have given up. Married Adrian. Spent my life wondering what could have been. I wouldn't have let you marry him. I know, you proved that spectacularly. Her voice was soft. Thank you for fighting for me, even when I didn't make it easy. You made it easy. You just made me work for it, which I deserved. You did, but you've more than made up for it since. Have I? Every day, in 1,000 small ways. She yawned. I'm tired. Can we go to bed? It's barely past sunset. I don't care. I'm tired and I want to fall asleep next to my husband. Sue me. Rowan laughed, stood, pulling her with him. Come on then, let's get you to bed. You're coming too, obviously. They headed upstairs, leaving the library dark behind them. And as they climbed the stairs together, Rowan thought about how far they'd come. From ward and guardian to partners. From silence to honesty. From fear to courage. It hadn't been easy. Probably never would be completely easy. But it was real. And it was theirs. And that was enough. 5 years after the wedding, the estate held its largest harvest festival in living memory. The orchards Lillian had insisted on planting had matured beautifully. The harvest was record-breaking, and the whole county was invited to celebrate. Even people who'd once whispered about the Duke and his scandalous bride showed up, because the scandal had faded into history. Become just another story people told, less interesting than the success of the estate and the partnership that had built it. Rowan stood on the terrace, watching the festivities. Music played. Children ran through the orchards. Families picnicked on blankets spread across the grass. And in the middle of it all, Lillian directed everything with calm efficiency, making sure everyone had enough food, that the musicians were paid, that the children didn't hurt themselves climbing trees. She caught his eye across the crowd and smiled. He smiled back. Marcus appeared at his elbow, 2 glasses of cider in hand. Hell of a party, he said. It is. You look happy. I am. Good, you've earned it. Both of you. Marcus took a drink. I remember when you first brought her here. Tiny thing. Scared and grieving. I never imagined. He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. Old man getting sentimental. You're not old. Older than I'd like, but that's beside the point. Marcus nodded toward Lillian. She's made this place better, made you better. Made the whole county better, if we're being honest. I know. Do you? Because I'm not sure you fully appreciate what you have. I appreciate it every day. Then tell her. Often. Don't let her forget. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go make sure the children don't destroy the new saplings. Someone has to supervise. He wandered off, and Rowan was alone with the view and his thoughts. He did appreciate what he had. Appreciated Lillian. Their life together. The future they were building. But Marcus was right. He should say it more often. He found Lillian by the refreshment tables, directing a crisis involving spilled cider and a very apologetic child. All fixed, she said as the child ran off, crisis averted. What brings you over here? You, always you. She raised an eyebrow. That's cryptic. I love you. I love you too. But I feel like there's more to this. There is. He took her hands. I was just thinking about how lucky I am. How you've made everything better, the estate, my life, all of it, and I don't think I say that enough. You say it plenty. I don't, because words can't really capture what you mean to me, what we've built together. He paused. But I'm going to keep trying anyway, every day, for the rest of our lives. Lillian's eyes were bright. You're getting sentimental in your old age. I'm 35, ancient, she said, echoing their conversation from years ago. Then she kissed him, soft and quick. I love you too, even when you're being sentimental. Good, because I have no plans to stop. I wouldn't want you to. She glanced back at the party. Think we can sneak away, or would that be rude? Probably rude, but I don't care if you don't. I don't. She grabbed his hand. Come on, let's go see the orchards, the ones we planted. I want to walk through them while the sun sets." They slipped away from the party, hand in hand, and walked into the rows of trees heavy with fruit. The light was golden, perfect. The air smelled like apples and late summer, and for a moment, everything was exactly as it should be. "Do you remember the first time we talked about planting these?" Lillian asked. "South pasture. You were 16, made some comment about expanding the orchards, and I said something idiotic. You said I was turning into a farmer, and I laughed." She smiled at the memory. "That was the day, wasn't it, when you realized?" "Yes." "And you ran away to London rather than deal with it?" "Yes." "What would you have done differently? If you could go back?" Rowan considered the question. "I would have been honest, told you the truth instead of pushing you away. Saved us both 2 years of pain." "Would you, though? Really?" Lillian stopped, turning to face him. "Because I'm not sure I would have been ready for it. At 16. I might have thought I was, but looking back, I don't think I knew what I wanted. Not really. And now? Now I know exactly what I want. And I have it." She touched his face. "Maybe everything happened the way it needed to. Maybe we needed the mistakes and the struggle to appreciate what we have now." "That's very wise." "I learned from the best," she grinned. "Now stop being maudlin and kiss me. We're in our orchards at sunset. This is practically a fairy tale. Don't waste it." He kissed her, long and slow and perfect. And when they finally pulled apart, the sun had set completely, leaving the orchards bathed in twilight. "We should get back," Lillian said, "before they send a search party." "Probably." But neither of them moved. Just stood there in the gathering dark, surrounded by the trees they'd planted together, and let the moment stretch. Because these were the moments that mattered. Not the grand gestures or the dramatic confessions, just the quiet spaces between, the ordinary magic of being alive and together. "Thank you," Rowan said finally. "For what?" "For choosing me. For fighting for us. For not giving up even when I gave you every reason to. You did the same for me. I should have done it sooner. Maybe. But you did it when it counted. And that's what matters." She took his hand again. "Come on, let's go back. Our guests are probably wondering where we disappeared to." They walked back together, the lights of the party growing brighter as they approached. And Rowan thought about the journey that had brought them here. Every mistake, every moment of fear, every choice that had seemed wrong at the time but led to exactly where they needed to be. It hadn't been perfect, but it had been theirs, and that made all the difference. 10 years after the wedding, Lillian stood in the same south pasture where Rowan had first realized he loved her. She was 30 now, a mother of 2, a duchess in more than just name, the woman who'd transformed an estate and a county and a man who'd thought he was too broken to be fixed. Behind her, the orchard stretched as far as she could see. Mature trees heavy with fruit, a legacy she'd insisted on building when everyone said it was impractical. She'd been right. About the orchards, about Rowan, about everything. "There you are." She turned to find her husband walking toward her, their daughter on his shoulders and their son holding his hand. "Papa said you were being sentimental again," the daughter announced. She was 6 and had absolutely no filter. "Did he now?" "He said you like to come out here and think about the old days." The girl wrinkled her nose. "That sounds boring." "It's not boring, it's remembering." "Still boring," Rowan laughed. "All right, you two, go play by the trees. Your mother and I need to talk." The children ran off, delighted to be released, and Rowan joined Lillian in looking out over the pasture. "You do come here a lot," he observed. "It's where it all started, where you realized. I like remembering that. Even though I was an idiot about it for years afterward. Especially because of that. It makes the now so much sweeter." She leaned against him. "We've built something good, haven't we?" "We have. And we're still building, still growing, still figuring things out as we go." "Always." She turned to face him. "I love you. I know I say it all the time, but I need you to know I mean it, every single time." "I know, because I feel the same way." "Good." She kissed him, quick and perfect. "Now let's go collect our children before they destroy something." They're your children when they're destructive, and yours when they're charming. Yes, I know how this works. They walked toward the orchard together, and their children saw them coming and ran to meet them, shouting about something they'd found in the trees. And Rowan caught Lillian's eye over their heads and smiled. This was it. The life they'd fought for, built together, defended against everyone who said it couldn't work. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt and struggle, but it was real. And it was theirs. And that was more than enough. It was everything.